that they had very numerous descendants. And of course, we see in the Asiatic populations exactly that. Shem was the third son of Noah, and he had 5 sons who inhabited the land that began at the Euphrates and reached to the Indian Ocean. They were the founders of the lineages of the Persians, the Assyrians, the Chaldeans, the Syrians, the Lydians, according to Josephus. This is where Shem and his lineage came from. Now, Salah was the son of Arphaxad, who was the son of Heber, from whom they originally called the Jews and the Hebrews. Now, if you go back there to the last slide, it talked about the Chaldeans came from Arphaxad. That's the son of Shem. So we can trace the Hebrew lineages back to Shem. Heber begat Joktan and Phaleg. I will now treat of the Hebrews. The son of Phaleg, whose father was Heber, was Ragu, whose son was Serug, to whom was born Nahor. His son was Terah, who was the father of Abram, who we know as Abraham, who accordingly was the 10th from Noah. So Abraham was actually the 10th in the lineage from Noah. And that is where all of the priestly lineage comes from. When it comes down to from Shem through, this is where the lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob came through. And this is the house of Israel. And back to these 3 primary supergroups. So the DNA evidence that was being found in the Native Americans in North America was not supporting the claims of the Book of Mormon. And this became quite an issue for a number of people, some of whom wrote books on the matter. Several left the church. But what happened was there was actually a small Christian fellowship group that actually went out and started to interview these LDS scientists and non-LDS scientists, indicating that the claims of the Book of Mormon, that there was a people that came out of the Mediterranean area, that would be of the house of Israel, came to the Americas and had a large population here in the Americas. This group created a DVD entitled DNA versus the Book of Mormon. This was produced, and the research kind of ended about 2002, and then they came out with it in the beginning of 2003. And that's the reason why when I and my family were at the general conference at the conference center, we saw this huge banner that said that DNA proves the Book of Mormon is false. And that is where the controversy really began in earnest. The conclusion from this video, DNA versus the Book of Mormon, it actually states this: the story of the Book of Mormon is told for the specific purpose of presenting another testament of Jesus Christ. The mission of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is to convert people to believe in this additional testament of Jesus Christ that took place in the Americas. The archaeological, linguistic, and now this new DNA evidence confirm that the Book of Mormon and therefore this other testament of Jesus Christ are not historically true. If the story is fiction, then so are its characters, and so was its crowning event. This means that the mission of the LDS Church is a fictitious account of Jesus Christ. This controversy was known at the very highest levels of the church. In January of 2002, during the Winter Olympics, there was a German reporter that asked President Hinckley this question. He said, "What will be your position when DNA analysis will show that in the history never has been an immigration from Israel to North America? It could be that the scientists will find out." And then President Hinckley cuts in a little bit. He said, "It hasn't happened. That hasn't been determined yet. All I can say is that's speculative." No one really knows the answer to that. Not at this point. I submit to you that this is a prophet of God speaking. And President Hinckley was right on. Because back in 2002, the genetic information was still in its infancy. What was going on in the genetic world at that time was that the European populations were also being sequenced and categorized into different lineages. As this was happening, they found, and this was from Science, volume 280, this is April of 1998. There was an article that came out that talked about a particular lineage that is called haplogroup X. Now this lineage was found and confirmed in Finland, Italy, and Israel, and also it ended up, at this point in time, it's actually been found throughout Europe, and it is known as a European lineage. In other words, a lineage that would go back ultimately to Shem's lineage. And this lineage is found in these three areas, as you can see. Science in 1998, this is the same article. It says, anthropologists have long assumed that the first Americans who crossed into North America by way of the Bering Strait were originally of Asian stock. But recently, they've been puzzled by surprising features on a handful of ancient American skeletons. Features that resemble those of Europeans rather than Asians. This new data from a genetic marker called Lineage X suggests a definite, if ancient, link between Eurasians and Native Americans, says Theodore Schur, a molecular anthropologist from Emory University in Atlanta. Now a new genetic study may link Native Americans and people of Europe and the Middle East. They found this definite link between people in the Americas and the Middle East, but they needed to find out whether or not it was ancient. This is American Journal of Physical Anthropology, 1999 article. This is about the distribution of mitochondrial DNA haplogroup X among native North Americans. Curiously, haplogroup X has been found in modern populations of Europe and Southwest Asia, but not in those of Central Siberia, which is regarded as the source for the peopling of the New World. An American Journal of Physical Anthropology, 1999 article, it states this: haplogroup X has now been reported in contemporary members of 7 specific unrelated language families, which are distributed throughout the geographic regions of the Canadian subarctic and the Great Lakes region. And this confirms its legitimacy as a founding haplogroup. It says 7 specific unrelated language families. That is significant because if the genetics are related, but they've had time for their languages to separate into 7 different languages, what does that tell you about how long ago this occurred? How long ago this DNA arrived in the Americas? It means it was a long time ago. And in fact, this is from the U.S. News and World Report, 2001 article. Wallace, now he was one of the primary American investigators, his newest and most surprising discovery is a set of genetic markers found only in the Ojibwa and other tribes living near the Great Lakes. The markers are not found in any other Native Americans or in Asia, he says, but we just don't know how it got there. But it's clearly related to the European population. The simple answer would be that the DNA arrived with European colonists, but the strain is different enough from the existing European lineage that it must have left the Old World long before Columbus. This puts European DNA in the New World before the time of Columbus. They needed to find out about how long ago did this DNA arrive here. In American Journal of Physical Anthropology, we identified a prehistoric individual, radiocarbon dated to 1,340 years, plus or minus 40 years, before present. That is a member of haplogroup X, found near the Columbia River in Vantage, Washington. The presence of haplogroup X in prehistoric North America confirms the hypothesis that haplogroup X is a founding lineage. And this verifies a prehistoric presence of haplogroup X in North America. I wanted to get a second witness on this. Evolutionary anthropology a year later. Now, most of what you're going to see in the DNA aspect of this now is moving forward in time, chronologically, and this is 2003. Now, remember the research from the video that has been put out against the church, their research ended in 2002. So this is research that came out after their video was completed. Haplogroup X also have been found in 2 individuals from a 700-year-old cemetery in west central Illinois. Now I find that very interesting because where was Zelf found? That's west central Illinois. Sequences are virtually identical to those of modern Algonquins from the Great Lakes region who have been confirmed to be members of this haplogroup X. So who is it? What are these groups that have haplogroup X DNA? They are Algonquin-speaking tribes. And who are the Algonquin-speaking tribes? Well, there's actually more than 100 Algonquin tribes. And these are some of those tribes. For example, the Arapaho, the Blackfeet, Cheyenne, the Illinois, the Kickapoo, the Lenape, the Delaware, the Lumbees, Mohicans, the Sac and the Fox Indians. Now, if you remember correctly, just prior to Joseph's death, it was a visit from the Sac and the Fox in his kitchen where Joseph Smith claims to have received, or that he knew by the Great Spirit, that they